Hi, I'm Steve, and I'm sitting here talking to Pete Alwinson, who has a brand new book, Like Father, Like Son. Pete, that's a book for men primarily. Men are really screwed up, aren't they?
That's great. That's a good way of putting it. We fake like we got it together, but
That's
we don't
true.
a lot of
That's
times.
true.
Yeah, men are struggling. There's about 175 million men in America. 38 million of them claim to be Christians, but of all sorts. But when I talk to guys and I say, how many of you guys have been intentionally developed by your dads? One, maybe 2 out of 10.
Oh, man.
And so we have a large group of guys in America. It's a largely unfathered generation. A lot of guys are just, they don't know what it means to be a man. And they're struggling. And they're trying everything. And they're getting exhausted.
I suspect there's some men that are listening or watching right now who've done it right, who've done it all.
Yeah.
They got their career, their kids are old enough, it looks like they're going to make it. They got their retirement set. The mortgage isn't paid, but it's close. They're doing all right. And their lives are meaningless and empty.
Yeah. That's a reality because they got a script when they were younger to follow this script. And they followed it. And a lot of, like you said, it not a bad script.
Yeah.
But deep down, what they're missing is that core stability and identity. If you ask men, what are they looking for? They'll probably say, I'm looking for success. And what they mean is they're looking for significance from success, but that means they got to earn it. So it's a performance orientation, and that can only carry you and fuel you so far. But deep down, they're missing that core relationship with God that enables them to have that identity as sons. And that's what we try to talk about the most in the book. It's really not a book of man up, make it happen.
Yeah.
It's really not a book about that. It's really a book about who God is as Father and how that unleashes us to be fulfilled at a deeper level as a man. Grace, you've taught me that grace is really what pulls everything together.
Yeah, it does. But they're not only guys that followed the script and thought they were going to get meaning from it. They're young guys watching now who, and maybe they see the reality a little bit better than we did or than I did when I was their age. I mean, they get all kinds of messages from our culture.
Yeah.
There isn't one script anymore. There are 1,000 scripts.
That's right.
And they're confused. They don't know where to go or what to do. Talk about young guys who just say, I don't know if I even want to play this game.
That's right. And it's so true. And there are a lot of young guys that are, they're, like you said, the multiple scripts. There used to be a more unified idea of manhood in America and what that meant. And like you said, now it's just across the board, multiple masculinities that guys can pursue. And because so many of our younger guys aren't ever fathered, really, they're kind of passive. They're kind of trying to figure their way. And some guys, they're not even pursuing anything.
Yeah.
And they're trying to find that mode of life that will bring them life and make them feel like a man.
This is a hard time to be a man. It really is. When I was growing up, it was easier. The script was clear, what was expected. But as you said, there's so much confusion. Tell me about your book. Are you going to give me 10 things I can do that will help the three steps to becoming a real man? What are you talking about in this book?
That's good. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed in you, and I'm not going to say these are the 3 things you got to do to become a man. The subtitle really helps put it together, like Father, like Son, how knowing God as Father shapes men. Because the reality is, in our earthly experience, the father is the 1,000-pound gorilla in a man's life, right?
Yeah.
And you had an interesting father experience, a good father experience. Some of the rest of us didn't have as good an earthly father experience. But the great news is that because of the gospel, God becomes our Father. Look how Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, Abba, Daddy. It's an intimate term. And a man, so I say to guys that had a bad earthly father experience, I said, if you just get to know God the Father, and Jesus leverages us into that relationship. If you get to know God the Father, it'll make all the difference in your life. Even if you had a good earthly father experience, or even if you had a bad one, you have God the Father.
Oh, man.
And so it's not going to be 3 steps. It's going to be knowing more about who God is and how God as Father just pushes us. Grace leverages us into a deeper life to become, and this I think is important, the men that God designed us to be, but also the men we want to be, as well as the men that women, children, churches, and our culture need us to be.
Yeah.
And it's not the 3 or 4 steps. It's what naturally happens as the gospel pulls us into a relationship with the Father.
And we are well fathered by Him.
Exactly.
Oh,
You know,
man.
you're a good dad, and I tell my kids, I'm a good dad.
You are.
Well, and you have, and I kid them, but then I say, but I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And so sometimes guys that had a really good earthly father experience think that their earthly dads are enough. That's not true.
No, it isn't.
We all need God the Father.
But from statistics that you quoted, most have not had that kind of experience.
It's really true. It's really true. And, you know, at a conference one time, I ended it by saying, all right, how many of you, even if your dad is dead, how many of you would love it if your father showed up right now and said, put his hand on your shoulder, said, son, I love you and I'm proud of you. I've had guys 75, 80 come walking up to me with tears in their eyes.
Yeah.
Saying, I would love that. Because they want that release and that affirmation and that approval that only a father can give. And so many men lose their dads, and so many men's fathers can't give them that approval.
Yeah.
But in God the Father, we have it. And it's foundational for us.
And we have a need. I've heard you talk a lot. And by the way, I love this book. Not just that others will read and find helpful, but that meant a lot to me as I was reading it. You said I had a good father experience, and I did, but he was a drunk. He was gone. He was not a good model. He just loved me unconditionally. And so I need a lot more. I need a father who is not only will love me unconditionally, but will provide to provide the kind of fathering and acceptance that only God can give to us. What do you want to see happen to guys as they read this book?
Good question. Good question. I want to see us, because I need this too. I mean, I'm not there. I haven't arrived, man. But I want to see us start our days enjoying being sons of the Father. And rest in that sonship. And if that's our core identity, you know, everybody's working out today and they say, you got to work the core. I hate exercising my core, you know, abs and all that stuff. But they do it because if the core is healthy, then you can build stronger biceps and leg muscle. Our core identity as men is sons by grace. And if we get that right, we'll move out into our days every day, more confident, less trying to, not that we won't try to achieve, but that the performance won't be the ultimate mark of our identity. Yeah. I'm going out into my day in strength. I'm going out in love, enabled to love. I'm going out having been graced in order to grace. And so when I mess it up big time, and when I fail, when I say the wrong thing, when I don't measure up, when I disappoint people, I can go run back to that core. And I want guys to get that so we don't have to feel, hey, I just give up. I can't do this anymore. This Christian thing is too much. I'm out of here.
You know, I think that the people who are watching, the guys and the women who want to understand their husbands and their sons and their fathers better, I think the people that are watching right now will be grossly mistaken if they say this is another religious book that tells me to read the Bible more, pray more, and be nicer, and go to church, and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
You're not saying that at all.
No, it's the relational thing. It's really understanding the relationship, enjoying the relationship. So we Christians focus so much on knowledge, and I love knowledge. You do too. You got a big library, but we know more than we're actually experiencing.
Yeah.
And as men, we tend to focus on knowledge versus the experience of experiencing the joy of being sons and of being loved by our Father.
Yeah.
You convey that to me, you convey that to so many, and that's what I want guys, as they read this book, I want them to experience the joy of being a son.
That's so good. You know, because we ought to say something about that. Women need to be daughters of that same father, don't they?
That's right. And it's not that women couldn't benefit from it, but it's kind of like we just need to sit down and talk as guys. And so if a woman got it and read it and maybe marked a couple of places and just said, honey, would you read this for me? Most guys will.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
would you read this chapter and just see if this meets your needs or speaks to you?
This book is just the core message of the gospel, isn't it?
It is. It is. And the reason why it's only slanted toward guys is because we struggle with this.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we need to sit down and talk as
Yeah.
guys. And I need to be able to spill my guts for them, because if I can do that, then maybe they can say, yeah, I struggle with that too.
Yeah.
And we don't like to get honest around women sometimes.
That's true. That's very true. We don't like to be honest, period.
We don't like to be honest. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We
Oh,
like to
man.
play games.
I'm so glad you wrote this book. And you guys who are watching this, get it. This is an important book for your life. Like father, like son.